But yeah, we'll get started. So welcome to the 2020 AGM. Bit different this year. Yeah, so I think, obviously it would be nice to see everyone in person, but that's just not the way that's going to work this year. If we did meet in person, we would have cakes. I'm afraid I don't have any virtual cakes for you. But we will try our best to keep things interesting anyway. We're going to follow the same format as usual, which is we're going to sort of try and get through the AGM business first, and then get on to the interesting part of the night, which is the talks. So we're aiming to finish the AGM business at 7:25. Then we'll have a short break, and then we'll get on with the talks after that. We've got some great guest speakers tonight, and me. So we've got Paul Allen from CAT, and we've got Andy Boyle from Otley 2030. So really looking forward to that. And we've got some reasonably big news of our own as well, which you may have already seen in the email. So it's probably not that surprising. But yeah, so there's certainly some interesting stuff going on. Normally, I would do a year in review, sort of fairly early on in the proceedings, but I wanted to do it after, in the second bit of in the second part of the evening when when everyone's going to be here. Unfortunately, because Paul Allen can't stay with us for a long time tonight, we've had to sort of rejig things around. So he's going to do his talk first. So actually, the kind of YC year in review is going to be the last thing of the night. So yeah, just have to keep you waiting for that one, I'm afraid. Okay, so just a bit of housekeeping stuff then. The event is being recorded, so please turn off your camera if you don't want to be in the video. Please stay on mute. I'll be muting everyone in a while, but please stay on mute unless you've been invited to speak. And if you do have questions, feel free to put them into the chat at any time. We've got people monitoring the chat, and so there'll be opportunities at the end of each section after people have finished talking to answer the questions. And if you do have anything you want to ask us, but you don't want to sort of say it or type it in front of everyone, then please just send us an email, and we'll deal with it after the event. In terms of the voting this year, so because of the setup that we've got going on, we wanted to give people a chance to vote in advance of the meeting if they couldn't make it. And indeed, some people have already. Very exciting. Excuse me. So we've got an online voting form, which is just a Google form, basically. And the way that we're going to do it is you can vote anytime, from now, really, if you want to. So you can go and fill in all the options on the form if you want to. The way that we've envisaged it working is that we'll go through all the things that you can vote on during the AGM, and then at the end of all those bits, there'll be a sort of 5-minute break where people can go and fill out the form. So it's perfectly fine to leave it till the end of the AGM business to go and do all your form filling in. If you want to do it bit by bit as we go along, that's absolutely fine. If you're happy sort of switching between Zoom and Google Forms and all that business, whatever works for you, really. But yeah, so the link is on the screen there, and I think Johnny's put it in the chat for us, which is great. Thank you, Johnny. Voting is for members only, but it's not too late to sign up. So if you want to become a York Community Energy member, you can do for as little as £2 for lifetime membership. And again, the link is in the chat. So, if you do want to vote tonight and you're not already a member, then go and fill that out, and yeah, and then we're all good, really. So the other thing to say as well is that because of the way that we're doing this, it's possible that we might not be able to give you the definitive results by the end of the AGM. It just depends. If everything's unanimous, then we'll be able to do the results straight away. But if not, then we are going to have to go back and check afterwards that we haven't got any duplicate voting and that everyone who's filled in the form is definitely a member. So that will take a bit longer. So in that eventuality, it will just, we'll have to email you the results later just to confirm. But yeah, if like I say, if everything's unanimous, then we can give you the results on the night, and obviously that'll be great. But we'll just see how it goes, really. Okay, so I don't think there was anything else I wanted to say about that. So we shall move on to approving the previous AGM minutes. And I did send out an email a couple of days ago with various documents on, and the AGM minutes were one of them. So you may have already had a chance to look at them. You might not have done. We've got the link in the chat if you want to look at them now. But it's basically just a case of when it comes to filling in the voting form, it'll just be a do you approve of the minutes? Yes, no, abstain kind of thing. Rich, is there anything we want to say about the minutes? Are we happy to want to draw attention to anything, or are we happy just to leave people to it? Sorry for.
I'd just like, if you're just giving me the opening, I'm going to just say what I put in the chat, which is, could everyone rename themselves in Zoom to their full names so we have it for the attendance register? If you're happy to do so, obviously you're not obliged to give us your full names, but we would normally take a register. So that would be great if you do that for our minutes for this year. Thank you.
Yes, sorry. After having that discussion just before about doing that, I then completely forgot to say it. Sorry about that. Yes, so like I say, have a look at the minutes when you've got a chance. You don't have to do any voting on it now. Normally we would now have a show of hands for who approves of the minutes, but it's fine to just leave it to the end and just fill in the form all in one go, or feel free to fill it in bit by bit as we go along. It's completely up to you. Okay, so in that case, we shall move on to accounts. And I'm going to hand over to Ivana, our treasurer, at this point to talk us through the accounts. And I think I'll just say as well, sorry, so there is a link in the chat. The chat is going to be full of links tonight. We're full of useful resources. But yes, so the link to the full accounts document is in the chat if you want to inspect that further. Sorry, Ivana, carry on.
That's okay. And the transition hasn't quite worked, but never mind. Yes, so if someone could be keeping an eye on the waiting room for a moment, please. Just to quickly talk you through, because I don't know how about on your screen, but actually on mine, I can't quite see everything. The sizing is funny. But basically, from a starting balance of £729 roughly, we finished the year on £959, which was a 32% increase, which is rather lovely. And our total expenditure was £651 during the year. Out of that, £419 went on events. That was primarily covering the cost of draft proofing training by Carbon Co-op, plus some room hire and related costs. But as you can see, events brought in £486, so we actually managed to recover those. And as we do more training sessions, then hopefully we will be quitting again. Membership and donations brought in £245, and I would very much like to thank all those who have supported us this way, especially through standing orders, which provide a regular income, so they're really much appreciated. Our total income was £882, and the thermal imaging camera loans contributed £150. And if it hadn't been for the pandemic, then we could have lent the camera out some more earlier this year. And now I hadn't included it in the accounts as an asset because its monetary value is now below the £500 threshold, but it is priceless in showing drafts and heat losses. So we are offering this service again this winter, although of course with COVID restrictions in place, so it will be a bit different. But if you'd like to learn how to draft proof your home, do sign up to our free workshop on the 16th of November. We'll be trailing it some more later on. And if you find it useful, please do consider joining or making a donation so that I can report even better results next year. Thank you very much. Have you got any questions?
I'm not seeing any in the chat so far, but yeah, please, as we go along, if you do have questions, please do raise them in the chat, and we can always come back and answer them if we skip ahead. But yeah, so far I'm not seeing any questions, so I think we shall move on. Thank you, Ivana.
Thank you.
And once again, just to remind you, there'll be a voting option on the form whether to accept the accounts. Feel free to do it now or at the end. I will stop saying this at some point just to remind you. Okay, so we'll move on to the elections then. And as usual, all the committee members are standing down at the AGM. So at the moment we are stood down, but committee members are allowed to immediately stand for re-election. And indeed, that's what 4 of us are doing. So as you'll see on the screen, we've got me as chair, Kit as vice chair, Rich as secretary, and Ivana as treasurer. So we will be standing for re-election in those positions. Then we've got some changes in the other positions. So we've actually had 2 committee babies this year, which is very exciting. I don't think we've ever had any committee babies to my knowledge. But yeah, we've had 2 this year. So Libby and Jess have, congratulations to both of them, by the way. And yeah, so related to that, I think both Libby and Jess have decided to reduce their involvement on the committee, which is completely understandable. So Libby was our membership secretary, and she's going to be changing to an ordinary member. And Jess has decided to stand down altogether from the committee. So sad to see her go, but thank you for your time. And so we've got Johnny taking over, well, potentially hoping to take over the role of membership secretary. And we've got a couple of new people joining the committee, hoping to join the committee. We've got Alison and Jamie Sims coming on as social media officer and ordinary member, respectively. And I think just before we go on, I would just like to say a big thank you to everyone on the committee for their hard work over the past year in interesting circumstances, and for putting up with me and the workloads that have been generated as a result. It's been surprisingly busy despite the fact we've all been stuck at home. So yes, thank you very much. It's much appreciated. Yes, so at this point, I will just introduce our 2 new committee members, or prospective committee members. So we've got Jamie Sims, who's standing for ordinary member. And if Jamie's on the call, would you like to say hi quickly and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Tom. So hello, folks. I'm Jamie. If you think I look very similar to the photograph there, it's because it was taken this morning with me wearing the same clothes I'm wearing now. So there's a load of waffle on me, which I've written and has been on the voting form. But in summary, I've been involved with YCE for about 3 years, maybe slightly longer. But I've only been a member since 2019, but I've supported a number of pieces of work, notably on Warmer Homes York and retrofitting. I think I'll cut to the chase because you can read the waffle if you particularly want to about my background. But the main thing is that I retired at Christmas and decided to spend much more of my time pursuing a passion, which is environmental interests, and YCE is certainly one of the top activity areas for that. And the only other thing I think, just in terms of transparency, is, as it says in the write-up in the biog, I'm also a lay trustee and director at University of York Students' Union. So that's me. Nice to meet everybody. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, I'm not sure if we've got Alison in the meeting as well. Not sure if she's
not, no.
Okay, no problem. So I will just give you a quick bio from Alison then, that she submitted earlier. So bear with me a second while I get my windows sorted. Right, so yes, so Alison's standing for social media officer, and this is her bio, which says, oh, right, hold on. The page keeps moving. Right, Alison has worked on household energy and carbon reduction for local government and is experienced in house surveying as a domestic energy assessor. She has a degree in environmental and social science and is passionate about the environment. Alison also runs Energy Girl Yorkshire, where she helps community groups and professionals use less energy, not only saving money on fuel, but being more environmentally friendly. She also does voluntary work for charities who combat loneliness and isolation, and is a trustee for a local community centre. And I would also say that Alison has been to quite a few committee meetings and Warmer Homes York meetings as well. So yes, definitely be happy to have both of these lovely people on our committee. Obviously, it's up to you guys to do the voting for it. So I will say that so none of the elections are competitive, as in nobody is vying for a place with anyone else. We've got 2 ordinary members potentially being voted in. That's fine. We can have multiple ordinary members. So when voting, don't feel that you're sort of voting for someone to knock somebody else out. Everything is non-competitive, so it's absolutely fine to vote for everyone on the form if that's your wish. Right, I will just find my other window. It's disappeared very handily. Yes, so, and once again, yeah, feel free to vote on the form now or at the end. It's completely up to you. Right, so I think that's all we need to say about that. So the next thing to talk about is, this is kind of our big announcement that you've probably already seen in the email anyway. So yes, YCE are wanting to become a community benefit society. And so just to give you a bit of background about this first and to kind of set the scene as to what, why we're doing this. So currently York Community Energy is an unincorporated association. And so we're not, not particularly official. Originally, YC was set up to promote community-owned renewable energy in York. We've slightly grown the remit since then, and we've started doing a lot of activities around retrofit and energy efficiency, which is our Warmer Homes York project that you might be aware of. And really, we've been doing lots of learning in that respect and lots of skilling up. We've been shadowing Andy Walker doing home assessments. We've been doing our own thermal camera assessments as well. And really, we kind of feel like it's time to kind of take it to the next step. And at the same time as well, obviously, it might seem like it's been a bit quiet on the solar front recently on the renewable energy projects, but we are still actively pursuing that in the background as well. We've got a few things. We've got a few things in the pipeline that not quite ready to talk about yet, but we're hoping to have some news soonish for you. I mean, the only thing I will say is that we've been talking to another community benefit society called Solar for Schools, and they've deployed solar panels on lots of schools throughout the country. So they're doing some very interesting stuff, and we are quite interested in working with them. They're lovely people as well. But we're just sort of trying to nail down the nature of our relationship with them at the moment. So we haven't got anything to announce yet on that front, but yeah, fingers crossed that we'll have something soon anyway. So we've got all that going on. So it just yeah, so there's kind of our 2 main activities with the renewable energy and the Warmer Homes York. And it just kind of feels like the right time to ramp it up a bit. So, if we became a community benefit society, then we'd be able to start offering our own services. Initially, this would be quite a small offering, but the main thing is we're hoping to start being able to do our own assessments, our own home assessments. and then just kind of build it up from there, really. So that's kind of why we're doing it. There is a blog post that we've written on the website about it, which I'm sure a link will magically appear to in the chat in a moment, which you can read more about, and which I did send out in an email, so you should be able to see that. But yeah, so I think, yeah, what I'll do is explain what a community benefit society is. I'll go through the details of this. Please feel free to ask any questions about it in the chat, and yeah, we can have a discussion about it. So yeah, so briefly then, a community benefit society, it's basically, you know, it's essentially a normal company. So trades as a company, can do all the things that a company can do, can hire staff, can sell products and services and all that kind of stuff. The main difference is that a community benefit society, it's not a non-profit, but profit is a very low priority, and you know, normally a community benefit society would invest profits back into the company itself and into the community. So in our case, the community obviously would be the people of York, and often a CBS has a sort of moral goal as well. So obviously our goal would be around reducing emissions from energy use in order to tackle climate change. So it's very much a, you know, it's a morally centered company, basically. It does have democratic control, so that's very similar to now, one member, one vote. And yeah, the existing members, you know, all you guys would be just transferred over. So, you know, from that perspective, it would be quite sort of seamless and transparent. There would be a board of directors who are all volunteers, and you know, that again, that's quite similar to what we've got now. We've got our management committee who are all volunteers, and the way that we would do it in the transition is the people on the existing management committee would just become directors, and then just like we do now, we'll have an AGM every year, at which point the members will have the opportunity to vote different directors onto the board. So, you know, it's basically the same in that respect again. One of the main differences is that if you're a member, that also means that you're a shareholder. Now, this is largely symbolic. So the share that you would have is basically a sort of nominal £1 share. So it wouldn't exactly be, you know, some massive stake. But it, you know, and it's a limited share in terms of you wouldn't be able to trade it. You wouldn't expect it to go up in value. It wouldn't be an investment that you expect to make a profit off, if you see what I mean. It's largely symbolic. Now, it is possible at a later date. Initially, we would expect every member to have one share. At a later date, we might have a share offer, in which case you could invest and buy more shares. But again, even if you did that, it would be purely as a sort of a way of supporting YCE rather than some kind of financial investment that you're expecting to profit from. It would still be one member, one vote. So more shares don't get you more control or more, you know, more influence or anything like that. And yeah, there wouldn't be any dividends paid on shares. So directors don't get dividends, investors don't get dividends. There is an option to give a small percentage interest on shareholdings, but again, that is optional, and I wouldn't assume it's going to happen, basically. So, you know, basically what you're doing by being a member and a shareholder is you're having a stake in the success of the company, the success of the CBS, rather than being an investor, if you see what I mean. The other feature of a CBS is you can have an asset lock, which basically means that in the event that the company goes into administration, the assets that it owns can't be kind of siphoned off. It can't be asset stripped by less scrupulous individuals or companies who are hoping to profit for private gain. Any assets would have to be distributed to other similar CBSs or charitable organisations. So those assets would stay in the hands of the community or people with similar goals, basically. So in a lot of ways, it's very similar to what we've got now. That's what we've aimed for. The main the main difference that the reason that we're doing this is so that we can become a bit more professional about it. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize people are allowed to to annotate. That's exciting. Right, I'm just going to turn that off and clear that. There we go. Thank you. But thank you for testing my settings management there. Okay, so I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say about CBS. So the main thing to understand about this is that we can't do this without the membership agreeing to it, because we are a democratic organisation. So it is going to be another option for you to vote on the form. And I think so the option tonight, it's not a sort of formal vote tonight. This is sort of largely, it's an indicative vote or a symbolic vote, if you like, on the principle of becoming a community benefit society. If the vote is successful, then we will still need to draft the final legal documents and submit them to become registered, incorporated as a CBS. We would have to have those documents viewed by you, the members. So we would have to have a separate EGM, extraordinary general meeting, to sort of ratify the final wording of the legal document, basically. So tonight, what you're voting on is if you're just happy with the idea in general of becoming a CBS, and then if that's okay, then we'll sort out the legal stuff afterwards and have a final vote on that as well. Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to say about it. Did we have any questions about that in the chat? Apart from we've got a comment from Debbie saying CBS works very well at Whitby-esque Energy.
Tom, you might say why we want to change from being an association to being a community benefit society with shares and things.
So the shares are the sort of the least significant bit of it. The main thing is that we want to be able to do trading activity. So if we offer our own assessments, then we're able to charge for that as a service and hire staff to do the assessments and things like that. So it's really just enabling us to do some of the activities that up until now we've been either shadowing Andy to do, or just accepting donations, basically, like the thermal imaging camera. We've just been asking for donations, basically. So it just makes us a bit more professional and able to scale things up a bit. I think that's what it's about, really. Is we've got this big need for retrofit at the moment. There's a huge amount of retrofitting that needs to be done across the country to make our homes energy efficient, to the degree that's needed to tackle climate change. And it needs a lot of scaling up. And at the moment we can't really help with that very much. So if we were able to sort of professionalize our operations a bit, then we could start ramping that up. I think that's the main thing, really. And like I say, the renewable energy side as well was starting to get a bit more serious about that too. So that's why, in a nutshell. Did we have any more questions?
Yeah, we've got some chat coming in. Can you see it?
So we've got some kind of comments. Oh, any disadvantages to no longer being a charity? So we can still take donations as a CBS, and we can still apply for grants. It might be that there might just be a different set of grants available to us. I think there is a bit of overlap, but there might be some that you can only access as a CBS and some that you can only access as a charity. I should say as well, at the moment, we're not a sort of fully fledged charity, so we're an association that has that we're registered with HMRC for charity purposes. So we still don't have all the same rights and abilities as a full charity. But yeah, we'll still be able to do that kind of stuff, and that is definitely something we'll be pursuing as well on the grant side. And in fact, there are some grants that we've seen that would be interesting that are only available if you're CBS or similar. So should be all right from that perspective.
The next question would be, can CBS borrow?
Yes, I believe so. I've not seen any restrictions. I don't know if anyone else has got any knowledge of that one. I've not seen anything say you can't. Go on,
Yes, a CBS can borrow money from banks, for example. And another thing to bear in mind is there may be the possibility of a bond offer, a community bond offer in the future if we need to raise capital. So there are various ways that a CBS can raise capital, and loans and bank loans and bonds are both ways in which we can raise capital.
And who's liable in the case of a default in that case?
So a CBS is a limited liability company. So if in a very unfortunate scenario, which we will do our best to avoid, the CBS was to go bankrupt, directors and members of your community energy would not be liable for that.
And the next question that's popped in is, why is CE claiming gift aid?
We are at the moment, yes. So I guess that would stop as a result.
It's not a huge source of income, I should say. So it will be sad not to get it, but it's probably overall the balance is good.
Any more questions? Over to you then, Tom. We can have a break according to my agenda.
Yeah, so we seem to have rattled through this quite quickly, actually. So I guess in that case, if there are no more questions, we can get on with the voting. So I'd originally envisaged a kind of 5-minute slot for this, but we can have longer, really, I guess. But yes, so you should all have the form by now, or the link to the form. I think Johnny might post it again in the chat for us if we're really lucky. But yeah, we've had all the, we've talked about all the things that we can vote on tonight. If you do have any more questions, you can still put them in the chat. But I think at this point, we shall pause for a few minutes and let you fill in the form. So if we reconvene at 7:15, and then we'll see how we're getting on with the results. Yeah, so please go ahead and let me know if you have any problems filling in the form, or any questions about that side of it. Okay, thanks. See you in a bit.
Has the voting form worked for everyone? Anyone
So-
had any problems?
I'm certainly seeing responses coming in. So that's good. Just yeah, give it another minute and make sure no one's had any technical difficulties. Okay, I'm going to assume that everyone who wants to has managed to vote successfully in that case. So we've had 22 responses. We had some in advance as well, which is good. Presumably people who weren't able to join or just wanted to get it sorted in advance. What I will do is just see if I can get the results on the screen. Right, so okay, can you see the results?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So the minutes, obviously we've got some abstentions and all this, but that's fine. It's if we've got against that we need to start doing very careful counting. So yes, so the minutes I would say are approved. The accounts are approved. I've been voted in as chair. Kit's been voted in as vice chair. Rich as secretary. Ivana as treasurer. Johnny as membership secretary. Alison as social media officer. And Jamie and Libby both voted in as ordinary members. And no abstentions whatsoever for the CBS. It's 100% for. So thank you very much, everyone. You're all very polite. No one's decided to put a spanner in the works with any voting against. So yes, thank you very much and congratulations to our new committee. It'll be a pleasure working with you, I'm sure. So there we go. Unless, I mean, I will keep an eye on the voting. There might be some last minute entries. What time do you think we should close the voting, Rich?
I would say we close the voting when we close the AGM.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
As in at the end of the whole talks and everything, I would say.
Yeah.
In case anyone has, anyone's waiting to see us in action during the public talks before deciding or something.
Might change the mind.
You can't take the votes back, can you?
You can. Oh, you can resubmit the form if you've got the link to it.
But
So,
we'd
yeah.
know.
I'll screenshot it now. Okay. So we've just got something coming in on the chat there. So Debbie says Whitby-esque, I presume, raised capital through a community share issue and loans, 3 of them. We've fully paid off 2 of the loans to date. Not an expert, but I believe we operate like a limited liability company, so no liability on the shareholders if we go bust. Excellent news. But yes, I think it's looking pretty positive there. So, like I say, we will have an EGM at some point, not too far away in the future, I hope. And we'll send out details about that. And we'll need a 2/3 majority on the final legal document because it is effectively a constitutional change. And the new document will, in effect, become our new constitution. So yes, we will send out details about that. We have a kind of draft in progress at the moment, but we'll send you the hopefully final wording once we've got it, with a nice underscore final in the final name, just so you know it's final. Yes, so I think that is all good. in which case I'll just move back over to this screen. And we finished a whole 5 minutes ahead of schedule, which is amazing. So thank you very much, guys. I'm going to call the official AGM business closed at 7:20. And so now we've got a 10-minute break instead of a 5-minute break since we finished early. And feel free to hang around and have a chat and things. But failing that, we shall see you, or hope to see you back here at 7:30 for some very interesting talks. Thanks, everyone.
Hello, Paul. Now is a good moment to try out your screen sharing, I think. Tom, Paul is somewhere in there.
Could I tell members that I have tried to make use of the Green Deal by asking, by going onto a website and seeing whether I could get external wall insulation for my house. And I found there were a couple of companies that offered it. They have to be authorized by the government to sell the insulation. And the only one that would do it, except they wouldn't, was in Doncaster. When I contacted them, they said they were now only taking people from 10 miles radius because they had been completely inundated by people wanting this insulation with the grant. So I've not been able to make use of the of this new opportunity to green up my house further. If anybody wants to talk to me about putting external wall insulation on my house and come and do it for me, then I'll be interested to talk to them.
So John, was that specific external wall insulation, or is it a cavity wall blown insulation you're talking about?
No, I'm looking for external wall insulation for a 1930s solid wall house.
Right. So, yeah, it's a little bit more specialist because of a damp. Yeah.
Yes,
I did it to my previous house. I found a firm somewhere in the country that was prepared to come and do it. Lots of scaffolding. It took a long time. They put a rendering over it to match the rendering that was there before. They have to leave a gap, as you probably know, between the Celotex board and the wall for a minute gap for air to flow up and down. Yeah, it can be done. Costs a lot of money. You can't expect a sensible financial return on capital invested, but that's not a reason to do it, perhaps.
I'm not expecting any financial return since my heating bills are zero. I'm doing it specifically to burn fewer logs on my 12 kilowatts of wood stove and to keep a warmer house. We have several bits of the house which are really cold, and they get condensation from the two sources of heat that we have in the house. So these two rooms get condensation, and putting in external wall insulation should help reduce that.
You do have to think about ventilation systems. I used mechanical heat recovery. You're probably already doing that.
I'm not doing that, but I will be. That will be part of the setup. So I'll need to look at where air is coming into the house already.
John,
and then
it's Roger here.
Okay, I'll shut up.
I was just going to say, one of the other areas to go look at is the junction of the eaves detail and the roof, because obviously you're putting that work further out. You've got to get clearance because you're going to actually reduce the amount of eaves, and also trying to maintain a decent quality. That becomes the cold spot in the room internally at the high level of the cook, at the junction of the roof and the house. So the details through that are really important.
I'd be asking a professional to do it. I'm not going to do this work myself. I'd be asking a qualified professional to do it. Obviously, it'd be great if I got a grant, but I don't have to get a grant. I could save up and buy it or borrow, you know. So I'm interested if anybody knows of any local companies which are currently doing it.
I don't know of any local companies that do it, but I know it's not that difficult in terms of technically difficult. So finding someone or being prepared to guide them through it might be a useful idea. We need one in York.
Maybe I should wait for YCE to be a registered installer.
There are an awful lot of cowboys out there.
Just add a few more. No.
Oh, don't you do that.
So, hi. So we've got Paul and Andy. Thanks for joining us, guys. Paul, are you okay just to try sharing your screen so we can check your slides are working okay, please?
Yeah. The only thing that I need to do is whoever's sharing it at the moment needs to stop.
Oh, right. Okay. I didn't realize. There you go.
Let's try sharing.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay.
Do you all see that?
Yes, looking good. Thank you for that. And can I just ask Andy to try as well, please, for the second talk? You might have to stop sharing for a minute, Paul. I think Andy should be co-host as well. Okay.
Thank you.
It's the end already. Lovely. That's looking good. Thank you for that, guys. So we will start again in about 3 minutes. Just let a few more people come in first.
Yeah, that seems to work.
Lovely. Yes, and as I said, thank you very much for coming, guys. It's great to have you here.
It's nice to be back in York.
Sort of.
Virtually.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right then. So yeah, according to Eventbrite, we've got a fair few more people to come in yet, so we'll give them a few minutes.
Okay. I think Charlotte's waiting.
Oh.
Should have come through.
Yeah, I'm probably going to have a nice deluge of people coming in now. Fingers crossed anyway. So whereabouts are you in real life at the moment, Paul?
Just outside Cat in Pant Perthog, where I live, in my living room.
Lovely. I presume Andy's in Otley.
There's probably a business in curtains. I know we've got different curtains in the background. We could do curtain hire.
It's bookshelf hire that's where the real money is. For this, you get a fake prop bookshelf to put behind you, make yourself look cleverer.
Yeah, my bookshelf game is not strong, unfortunately. So
likewise.
But yeah, also I think my wife would have a word to say if we decided to lend out our curtains. So
there's a lot of virtual backdrops with bookcases in that you can get for free online.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I want to see moving backgrounds next. It'd be nice to have the our windmill logo sort of turning in the background.
Well, they are, of course, available, as you probably are aware. In fact, they're available for free.
What, as part of a Zoom background?
Here we go.
Oh, lovely.
There you go.
Oh, show off.
Yeah, that's free on Zoom. It's obviously fighting a bit with my light levels. There we go. Nope, still fighting with my light levels. If you get the light levels right, it looks very natural, as I'm sure you'd expect.
Okay.
I might consider it next time, Peter, maybe for a slightly less official one than the AGM. So it's not too distracting for the official business.
Yes, you do need to think of a series of these things for different purposes. There we are.
I mean, I suppose if I'd thought about it in advance, we could have had this kind of BBC swingometer style election results, but
And someone commenting on the polling information that was coming in.
right, I'm just gonna give people a couple more minutes because I think there's a few more to come yet.
And another thing from my past was when we were all sat in a cinema waiting for the film to start, there'd be this music playing, a kind of overture. Maybe we could have one of those too, Tom.
So I was actually on a Zoom call once where they'd put some music on at the start, and it really didn't work. it was just like really distorted and kind of going in and out. It was very bad.
All right.
Yeah. There is a Zoom setting that allows the music to go straight through the digital system without using your loudspeaker and your microphone, and then it's not distorted. But when people do it the wrong way, it gets very distorted.
Yeah, I did wonder if they'd maybe forgotten to tick that setting actually, but again, you know, we can try out all these things later, Peter. We'll do it for the next committee meeting, maybe. Just have a full-on technology meeting.
I can remember as a small boy in cinemas there being ice cream and cigarette sales actually in the auditorium.
Wow.
Not to be recommended. But,
Oh, Paul, that was wonderful.
Yes, I was about to say, I think
Give us
that's
some more, Paul.
much better than anything you could download from the internet for this purpose.
Oh. Wow, thank you very much. I feel like this meeting suddenly got a lot classier.
I'm expecting Michael Palin to walk in there at that point there for some reason.
Oh, lovely. Right.
There is a Zoom setting that allows Michael Palin to walk into the background. Joke.
You never know. Okay, I think we will get started because we can't wait forever. So yeah, so I'll start off by saying thank you everyone for coming. So I'm Tom de Simon. I'm the chair of York Community Energy, just re-elected, I'm happy to say. So we've just had our official AGM business, if you weren't here for that. And I guess, yeah, the main thing to report is that all the committee positions were filled successfully. Everyone's been voted in to the positions they wanted to, and yes, it looks like we're on course to become a community benefit society as well. We had a unanimous vote on that, so yes, very exciting times. So we now move on to the more interesting section of the night, which is the talks, and we've got some amazing guest speakers. We've got Paul Allen from CAT, very, very pleased that he's been able to join us tonight, and Andy Boyle as well from Otley Energy. Again, thank you very much for coming. I think before we start, we'll just kind of do a bit of housekeeping. So first of all, the event is being recorded. So if you don't want to be in the video, then please turn off your camera. It's up to you whether you have your real name or you choose to rename yourself as something else. Again, if you don't want your real name appearing in the video, then feel free to rename. Please try and stay on mute during the talks. If you do have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and we will have people monitoring the chat, and there'll be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of each section. And the other thing I'll say as well, so normally in an AGM, the chair would give a report of the past year for York Community Energy. And normally we probably would have done that by now, or would have been doing it shortly. But I understand that Paul hasn't got a lot of time for us. Sorry, that sounds really terrible. So Paul has to be shooting off early, is what I meant to say. So we've rejigged things a bit. So he'll be going first, and then he'll be able to get going. So I'll actually be doing the year in review at the end. So we've kind of reversed the order effectively. So without further ado, I will hand over to Paul. Yeah, can't wait to hear about the Zero Carbon Britain report, which I'm sure he will tell you. Basically says that we've got all the tools and resources we need to get to net zero in the UK. We just have to actually do it. And I'm sure he's going to give us some more details on that. So take it away, Paul.
Welcome to the Centre for Alternative Technology. If you want to have a look around, that's perfectly possible because we're on autumn watch.
Sorry, can I just say, Paul, you're a bit quiet there. Are you able to turn it up somehow, or is there some kind of microphone issue?
Did he move his microphone to play his flute?
Yeah, I was going to say it was lovely and audible during the music solo.
Is that any better?
Yes, much better, thank you.
Good. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Clear as a bell.
Good. So, yes, basically what I'm going to offer is an overview of the Zero Carbon Britain research and the most recent report rising to the climate emergency. We look at powering down the amount of energy we need to deliver society's goals, powering up 100% clean energy, and rethinking food diets and land use. But part of our analysis is to recognize that it is a wicked problem. And to understand what a wicked problem is, we have to think, well, back in 73, Rittel and Weber developed the term to help us recognize really complex, challenging problems, those with many feedbacks that feedback on themselves, those are deeply ingrained into a system, and those with no single solution. So the first sort of wicked solution that we need, and I'm going to outline 5 wicked solutions, because the only way really to deal with a wicked problem is to offer wicked solutions that feed back on themselves, that can begin to outpace the feedbacks within the problem. The first one is really based around, well, it's understanding what a net zero vision would be like. If we want to take society to a place, we have to begin to unleash new thinking about what it would be like to be there. So we launched our first report in 2007, and we've done all sorts of more detailed reports looking at food and diets, looking at how we actually make it happen and overcome the barriers. And the most recent report, end of last year, was Rising to the Climate Emergency. All this existing work to date is available free to download from the CAT website. Because what we have to do to take people there is to cross what I think of as the yawning chasm between politics as usual and the rates of change that the climate science demands. So we don't root ourselves in politics as usual, although politics is changing rapidly. We root ourselves in the demands of the climate science. And in order to begin to explore that, what we have to do is understand where we are now. Any sort of scenario that we have has to be rooted in current levels of emissions. So in the end of 2019, the most comprehensive set of data we had was 2017, and it's about 540 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent every year to run the UK. Now, about sort of 80% of that is burning fossil fuels in households, business, industry, transport. About 9% is from industrial process, from manufacturing, from chemical plants. About 10% is from land use. Now you notice there's a dark green bit, the other side of zero. Some carbon is captured by natural systems, but we're nowhere near in balance between the amount that we're capturing with natural systems and the amount that we're giving off. So what we're suggesting is 2 fundamental processes that intertwine, that work together. There's powering down the amount of energy we use through a smart approach to buildings, transport, energy, and land use, whilst powering up 100% clean energy supply. Those both happen simultaneously. So we've got to think, well, power down. Let's think first about how we use energy. Let's understand what we use energy for. Again, in that 2017 data set, we're using about 1,700 terawatt hours of energy per year, breaks down into 4 key categories: buildings, heating, hot water, buildings, cooking, lighting, appliances, Zoom calls, tellies, what industry use, and then what we use to move ourselves and move stuff around. And we're suggesting that through powering down, which isn't just energy efficiency, it's not using energy for things we don't really need to do, we can make a 60% reduction, because we're living an energy extreme lifestyle. There's energy pouring out left, right, and center that needn't be used, that's used wastefully. But you might notice the orange, the industry emissions, actually go up because we recognize we're going to be really, really busy. So even though we might do industry on a more efficient way, using surplus electricity to manufacture steel instead of coking coal, we can do that in a clean way, but we're going to be really busy. So we've actually increased emissions in the scenario for that. But then thinking about the other colors, well, thinking about buildings, particularly heating, if we imagine an average UK house on a housing estate somewhere just outside York, it's using about 10,000 kilowatt hours per year to keep it warm. Now, if we go through that house like a dose of salt, we insulate the walls, the roof, the floor, better windows, doors, reduce drafts, air leakage, better controls, so we're only heating the rooms we intend to use, and slightly lower internal temperatures, so you might have to wear a jumper. We can reduce that to about 4,000 kilowatt hours per year. Now, doing that is a fairly major undertaking, but it's not a cost. It's an investment, because if that house then provides habitable accommodation at 40% of the energy consumption over the rest of the life of its house, say 30 years, that's saving a considerable amount of energy and a considerable amount of money. Another example to think about is transport, thinking about how much stuff we move around and how much we moved ourselves around before we're actually in lockdown in Wales again. So thinking about transport. When we did the scenario, we thought, well, let's have a think about how much less people can travel per annum. And after much debate, we decided on a figure of about 13%, that by the end of the transition period, we are moving about 13% fewer miles. But by rethinking public transport and making that work for the benefits of the citizen, by encouraging active mobility, walking and cycling, we can actually travel less and travel differently. So looking at how that plays out, if we look at the emissions from transport today, huge amounts from car use. If we travel less and travel differently, we can reduce that by 35%. But then improved efficiency of light, smart electric vehicles can bring that down to about 78%. But the challenging thing for society is really thinking about aviation miles. So we included in the model the creation of net carbon neutral aviation fuel, and we found we can create enough for a long haul flight every couple of years for everybody. Now, not everybody flies or wants that. Some people are frequent flyers and we're flying every weekend to New York for a hen party or a stag party. So we can still have international travel, so we don't have to say goodbye to our relatives in other parts of the world, but it's more a rational amount, and it's a journey that we'd probably spend more time. We're also thinking about the road and rail freight remains similar to today's level, but rail freight more than doubles. There's around 30% of road freight switches to rail, particularly at night. So that's sort of buildings, industry, transport. Now, thinking about powering up, this section of the report outlines how we can have 100% of our energy from renewable sources, from clean energy sources. It's a transition to a new fuel mix. And the key question that everybody asks always is, yeah, but with 100% renewables, what happens at night when it isn't windy and the wind turbines aren't blowing? How do we keep the lights on in the hospitals and all that? So we set out to do very detailed modeling. We actually really investigated this question. And in order to do it, you have to use hourly modeling. You can't just use monthly modeling or weekly modeling. So we modeled it hour by hour, but then we realized that years vary from year to year, and the model might work well in one year, but another year it might be -15 for 2 weeks and not at all windy. So what we did is we took a data set from 2002 to 2011, 87,000 hours of met data, and we began to explore what that meant. And we found that by adjusting the model, by tweaking the model, by including storage and backup, we can say, yes, we can keep the lights on, it's mission possible. So for example, we looked at a map of the UK, we took 2 offshore wind farm sites, validated the data so we could get hour by hour predictions of what those wind sites would produce. And then we began exploring, well, where do we put the turbines we're suggesting in this model? How many of them? And you can tweak not only their location, you could tweak how many of different types, onshore, offshore, and so forth. We found that I think Boris Johnson has said the UK is the Saudi Arabia of offshore wind, and he's definitely right. So we put them all over the UK. Now, the reason we did that, because it's actually windier up the north of Scotland, so we tried putting them all up there, but that produces big peaks and big troughs. If we spread them around, particularly the Dogger Bank, which is quite shallow, we can come up with the optimum mix for minimizing the peaks and troughs. So begin thinking about adding to the onshore wind, offshore wind, wave, tidal, PV, building it all together so you've got one graph hour by hour every day for 87,000 hours, but also using the same data to model demand, because even though you power down demand, it still varies with the time of day, it varies with the season. So we've got 2 simultaneous graphs for electricity demand and electricity supply. Then the model crosses them to identify peaks and troughs. And we optimize the model to minimize the peaks and troughs, but they still exist. So essentially what we have to do is looking at ways of lopping the peaks, because in any electricity grid, if you're pumping more energy in than the grid's using, the problem you face is that the voltage and frequency become unstable, and we can't have that. So we have to capture the peaks. Currently, this is done through curtailment by switching offshore wind farms off when we just can't use the electricity, but we've found there are ways of capturing that or exporting that, storing it, and then deploying it during the shortfalls. So the next diagram is a bit complex. It's a Sankey diagram, but I'll talk you through it. You take the peak. Now you can export about half of it through high voltage DC networks between wind farms to the Nordic countries. The Nordic countries are setting up to become Europe's battery through very large pump storage schemes. So they're keen to take surplus. But the other half, what you do is you do something called electrolysis. If you put DC into water, it splits the water into hydrogen and oxygen. You might remember it from your O-level chemistry. So we thought, yes, well, let's use the hydrogen as an energy store. But then we tried to match that with the existing gas grid and the existing power stations. And yes, you can do it, but you have to build a whole different gas grid, gas storage, different gas power stations. So we looked around for solutions, and we found that we can actually capture by carbon dioxide out the atmosphere that's already there through leaves, through sewage systems. There's all sorts of ways of capturing it, adding that to the hydrogen and making synthetic methane or synthetic liquid fuels for road haulage. Now, if you do that, what you're doing is you're borrowing carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, adding it to the hydrogen, burning it and letting it back to where you got it from. You're not drilling into the ground and releasing carbon that's been there for millions of years in fossil fuels. Now, if we make synthetic methane, suddenly we can turn to the gas industry, the gas storage, the gas pipelines, the combined cycle gas turbines that power the electricity grid. And we can go, you're all part of the solution now. You're not our enemy. You're part of Zero Carbon Britain, but it's just a different type of gas made by lopping the peaks and storing the surplus renewables. So that brings a lot of stranded assets. It rescues a lot of stranded assets. So we looked for at-scale examples of how this has been deployed. And one of the most interesting ones is a fabulous project called Store and Go. If you just type Store and Go into Google, you can find that there's something like 27 partners from 6 European countries have been trying this out, of using surplus renewables to produce hydrogen, then methanating it to produce carbon neutral synthetic liquid fuels or even synthetic aviation fuels. And they've been doing that at scales from 200 kilowatts up to a megawatt, and they've been running for years. It's something that energy storage is going to be the next thing that scales up and costs fall, just like we've seen with solar and wind. So basically, the analysis revealed that 74% of the time, with the suggested model, there's a surplus. Supply exceeds demand. So 26% of the time, there's a shortfall. But you can be canny about that. You can have short-term storage, like de Norwig pump storage, or batteries, or load shifting that encourages people to do their washing for cheap at a different time of day, or charge their electric vehicles at a different time of day for a much lower tariff. A bit like a flexible smart economy 7, if you remember the economy 7, cheap electricity during the night. So that can reduce that 26% to 11%, and then the carbon neutral synthetic gas, we can produce enough to cover it. But to do this, it requires rethinking land use. So what we have here is a map of Britain. But instead of the normal shape, we've squeezed it into a rectangle, and we've colored it according to how the land is used. So you can see the urban is gray, grassland for livestock is pink, growing food to feed animals, to milk or eat the animals is yellow, growing food for us is orange, and then various different types of forest and unmanaged conserved land. So there's a huge array of different types of land use. But once we understand that, we can begin to optimize it. So if we think about the diet that we eat, about 70% of it is agricultural land. So we then employed a professional dietitian and began looking at the mix of food that we eat. and basing it around the government's Eat Well guide. So what we see here is the inner circle is what the Eat Well guide suggests as a mix of the 4 different types of foods: starchy foods, high protein foods, high fats, sugars, and fruit and veg. The outer circle is either the average diet today or what we suggest as a zero carbon Breton diet. So today we should be eating 39% fruit and veg, we're eating 9%. We should be aiming for 5% high fats and sugars, salts, and it's 43%. So our diet is out of kilter with what's good for us. So what we suggest is not that everybody becomes vegan or everybody becomes vegetarian, but we simply move the mix of these 4 different types of foods to better match the suggested healthy diet. And what we find is really interesting. Switching to a healthier diet can actually free up lots of land because we're not producing as much meat, because we shouldn't be eating as much meat as the average person eats. So thinking about the rectangle you saw, what we've taken out of it is grassland and cropland. The first block is the agricultural land use today. And then if we switch to a zero carbon Britain diet, we're actually growing more food that we eat ourselves and reducing the amount of grassland for grazing livestock. But in addition, we're reducing food imports from about 42% of all of our food to about 17%. So we're actually making ourselves more self-reliant and more resilient. So that frees up some pink that we can begin to think of other uses for. The first is what I described earlier. We use some of the pink for capturing carbon to make synthetic fuel from the hydrogen from surplus renewables. Some of it, about 41 terawatt hours, we burn as biomass, but the rest is not burned. The carbon is added to the hydrogen to make synthetic fuels. But what we find is that there is still some pink left. So we think, well, if this is an ecological as well as a climate emergency, and we need to reach net zero without deploying any fanciful, magical, mechanical devices that our children will buy and build, which will pull carbon out the air, but we do it through revitalizing natural climate solutions, we can use some of that pink for that. So what we suggest in the scenario is to double the forest area of the UK, to bring it more in line with the European average. So we can increase the use of wood products in buildings, and we'll restore 50% of UK peatlands. We re-wet them so they begin to capture carbon again. This can increase the amount of net negatives. So when we go from where we are today, which is what we started with, to what we're suggesting in the zero carbon Britain scenario, where we're 100% renewables, powered down, insulated houses, more efficient industry, we can go to this. So even if we're using synthetic aviation fuel that's carbon neutral, burning it high in the atmosphere still has a multiplier effect. And we still need some industrial emissions and some land use emissions, but we can increase the carbon capture from natural systems to bring that into balance. Now, we don't intend this to be the only way of doing it. This is one evidence-based model which begins to paint a picture of what it could be like if we did it. We can tweak it, you can tweak it, it will evolve over time, but it shows a lot of the technologies we need are already there. So that's the first of the sort of wicked solutions that we're exploring. But the other thing, as we begin looking, is the feedbacks within this, because CAT's been there for 45 years. We've been doing this since 2007, and we've been keeping an eye on the price of what it is that we're suggesting. So if we go back to when CAT was founded, 1975, it was about $100 per watt for a PV module. Now it's at a record low. And as more and more people wanted them, people invested in manufacturing to make manufacturing more efficient, which reduced the price. As the price dropped, it became viable in more locations. That fed back on itself. And then beyond a certain point, it was cost effective. So the amount of installed capacity went up drastically. The same for wind. We're seeing the same feedback effect happening. And Wind's really interesting. Recently, offshore wind costs fallen 32% from just a year ago and 12% compared with the first half of 2019. This is produced in 28th of October 2019 from Bloomberg. The more it happens, the cheaper it gets. The cheaper it gets, the more it happens. And even since the pandemic, offshore wind investment has quadrupled. It's rocketing, it's rolling, it's feeding back on itself. Another exciting feedback is what we might call new leadership. If we hadn't been in lockdown this year, school children would have been on strike, many deeply committed people, retired vets, doctors, artists would be taken to the streets, calling for a climate emergency. And all sorts of councils across the UK have declared a climate emergency, are building action plans, and this has fed back, and it's continuing to do so. Powys County Council, just a few weeks ago, the council that Cat's in declared a climate emergency. So this feedback has rippled, and there's a fabulous website, climateemergency.uk, which sort of maps out all of the declarations that have been made across the UK of a climate emergency. So being interested in how this might develop, every month or so, I would screenshot the map just to see the number of councils that have declared a climate emergency. And I just kept going back there and screenshotting it again, and going back there and screenshotting it again, going back there and screenshotting it again. It's an astounding number of councils have declared a climate emergency. And they're making action plans, but how does a council have an effect? Well, one of the things that we explore in the report in chapter 4.5 is the idea of the four directions. A council, they're very different beasts, from Manchester Metro region right down to a parish council. But each one has things that they have direct jurisdiction over, and they can make policies and plans to change what they have control over. But they can also lobby upwards to the next layer of council, or the next layer, or straight to devolved administrations, county councils, or UK government. And they can lobby up for the changes they want to see that they don't have direct jurisdiction over. Now, councils can also work sideways. They can learn from examples. They can ask councils of a similar size or a similar scale, or councils near them, or other councils that are rural or urban, for examples of real life examples of things they've done, like mass retrofit of social housing. And they can also share sideways the real life projects they've done that they're really proud of. Now, if councils begin to work together and lobby upwards collectively, they have a loud voice. The fourth direction is inwards. Councils can train their staff about the climate emergency, the necessary solutions, and the role the council can play in driving change. So that's another exciting, feeding back, wicked solution. The fourth wicked solution boils down to essentially, for every change that a council needs to make, there are real life innovative projects that show how that can be achieved, from community owned hydro to retrofit of houses like Energy Sprong, to things like the York bike bells, which are a very, very interesting example, or the Active Wellbeing Project in Birmingham that trains people and actually gives people a bike to get them more mobile. So it's exciting that lots of that, it's all ready to go. What we have to do is just learn from it and share it. But I think possibly the most exciting wicked solution is the concept of multi-solving. Is not just thinking about the carbon transition, but thinking beyond that. Because it becomes one of the most exciting opportunities in human history, offering us a chance to simultaneously resolve other problems. And maximizing co-benefits builds a wider coalition of support across society. So the people in York that are thinking about fuel poverty can be brought into the climate action plan, because doing what we need to do to the buildings can actually reduce fuel poverty. So the trick is to identify these synergies, I think. So firstly, I mean, post-COVID, post-pandemic, we need to reboot the global economy. doing that means investing, and investing in the right thing, in the right way, can actually create jobs. It can get the economy going again, build a sense of collective purpose, jobs that make sense. We can reduce fuel poverty, we can increase our diets, health, well-being by eating the right mix of food, increase active mobility, reduce unnecessary travel, enhance space for biodiversity. We're keen to engage with wildlife trusts to look at, if we were to double the UK's forest cover, what's the biodiversity optimum way of doing that? And restoring UK soils. And all of this builds our resilience, not just to climate, but to other emergencies, and builds a wider coalition for action, much more diverse body. And the idea of becoming more resilient, I think most people know that it's a bit unresilient how we do things at the moment. I mean, one example might be we could be more self-reliant in food. What we're suggesting in the scenario reduces the amount of food we have to import from 42% to 17%. We thought about making it zero, but then we'd have to say, well, we can get to zero, but there'd be no more coffee, tea, or chocolate, which I don't think would go down too well. So we still import the things that we can't grow here. But I came across this packet of radishes from Peru in the local supermarket. I just thought, we can grow radishes in the polytunnel behind the supermarket. We don't have to import them from Peru. So we can increase our self-reliance. And I think the other thing that widens the connection is beginning to think about new income and employment, particularly in linking urban to rural areas, so we can have more people producing food. And we've got this land army that's been working in Machantlath. We've got farmers that have opened up their fields to vegetable production, relocalizing supply chains, but also getting renewables on farms helps build it. And natural carbon capture, increased forestry and wood products, innovative new bases, businesses springing up. So what we hope to do with the report is just open new conversations. It's not meant to be the only way to do it. It's a conversation starter for you. And to help speed things up, we've Cat's just launching a new Zero Carbon Britain Hub and Innovation Lab. We recruited the team, and then we went into lockdown. So we've met about twice, and we've seen each other on Zoom about 500 times. But we're learning to work that way. And it's really interesting what we can learn from that. But we're listening now to what people need. We're doing research so that what we offer doesn't duplicate what somebody else is offering. And we're also running innovation labs to try and find the difficult questions to explore the specific barriers for the transformation we need. Now, another exciting thing that we're thinking about is Zero Carbon Britain Live online training. The next training is 2 days long. It's the 16th and 17th of November. And we go through what I've just been through, but over 2 days with some expert speakers. I think we've got Rob Hopkins, Andrew Sims, all sorts of people who are looking at real life examples. And at the end, we say, well, give us your feedback. And there's quite a lot of people who will say, oh, it was really useful, but I really miss coming to CAT. But there's quite a lot of people will say, actually, I'm a busy councillor in the southeast. I wouldn't have time to travel to Wales for this, but I can do it live online. So we're getting a more diverse mix of people. So if it's of interest at all, do have a look. And I think we do offer some free bursary places. So to sum it all up, you can download the report, which is essentially the PowerPoint, but in much, much more detail with the text attached to it, not just my words, from cat.org.uk. All the reports, all the previous reports, we've got the Hub and Innovation Lab, you can do a degree, and all of these different topics at postgraduate level. We do short courses to give you very specific training, and there's a free information service that can help answer the difficult questions. And if you watch Autumn Watch for the next fortnight, you'll get a look around CAT. Thank you very much. Was that on time?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Really inspiring, some very radical and exciting solutions. And it'd be nice to imagine that we could get some political buy-in for them, but you never know. As you say, the winds are kind of shifting a bit in that respect. Yeah. I will now ask Peter, if I've seen a lot of comments and questions coming through in the chat. Are you able to send a few Paul's way?
I can send a few Paul's way. Are you ready for this, Paul?
Yes.
Good, good. There was some interest in nuclear power. Could you comment on the new nuclear proposal by Bill Gates and his team? And I'll add a bit about that. What about using thorium as a fuel? Then there's also, in terms of nuclear, there's a notion that without subsidies, the energy from offshore wind farms is more expensive than nuclear. Is that true?
Well, I think we have to recognise that if you're using the full levelised cost accounting, you're comparing all of the costs, particularly for now, the costs of dealing with nuclear waste extend for hundreds and thousands of years. So you have to include all of those costs. If you're running a nuclear facility, you have to have fighter planes on the runway ready to go in case somebody tries to crash a jetliner into it. All of those costs don't appear in the price they sell it per unit. But also, as renewables have got cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, they can compete without subsidy now, particularly if you compare them with a levelised cost accounting for fossil fuels, where you're actually paying for the future adaptation costs, the air quality costs, all the other costs associated with fossil fuels. So we're going to end up with a high renewable grid, in which case the backup we need needs to be able to be switched on and switched off within an hour. You can't switch a nuclear plant on and off within an hour. So predicting what the wind's going to be on Thursday next week is a really difficult thing to do and probably very unreliable. But predicting the wind 1 hour ahead is pretty reliable. So we can predict what the energy will be an hour in advance, and we can say to the combined cycle gas turbines, fire up. I think we're going to need you in 1/4 hour, and they'll be ready. So it's that flexible, adaptive backup that really makes the difference, I think.
Okay, thank you for that.
What on about? Comment. Sorry, because Debbie's put something in the chat as well about the cost of Ørsted Hornsea 2, which is an offshore wind farm, which has been involved in contract for difference. Basically, it's got a guaranteed price of about £56 per megawatt hour. And if you compare that to what Hinkley Point C, which is the big new nuclear power station that they're trying to build, that's got a guaranteed government subsidy of government payment of £96 per megawatt hour. So it's like nearly double the price and guaranteed for like 50 years or something. So even if you just look at the actual money that's changing hands now, nuclear is expensive. It's very expensive for new nuclear. Obviously, the offshore wind, that's just for the kilowatt hours. So there's things about balancing as well. But it's not like nuclear is brilliant for balancing supply and demand either, because you can't turn it up and down very quickly. So
Johnny, if I just come in on that point, the one thing about the Ørsted plant is I know from people involved who were bidding against them for that at the time, there is some skepticism whether that will actually get built.
Fair enough.
So there is a question mark about the £56. However, I wouldn't dismiss it. It's a lot lower than the £92.50 for Hinkley Point C, index linked, guaranteed by government, which is remarkably expensive. And the other point I think is single point of failure. A single nuclear unit I think is 800 megawatts. Typically the usual clusters for the wind farms are smaller as well. So the failure mode thing is another factor. So we do have to think about the stability of the grid and the balancing use of system charges. At the moment, we're seeing them rocket because of the higher wind concentrations on grid over this summer. So there's a lot of factors to play, and it's not that straightforward. But what I'm really, Paul's presentation covers so much so well. So I would say I'm sure there's a lot of thought gone into what he's said there, Paul.
Okay, thanks guys. Are we okay to just move on to another question, because we haven't got long for questions, I'm afraid. So Peter, are you okay to move on?
Okay, we can move on. There was a lot of interest in the storage of surplus electricity. people were concerned about the costs and how efficient it was. Would you like to comment on that then, Paul?
Oh, certainly. If you convert surplus electricity into hydrogen, you're probably getting about 25–30% efficiency. But the important thing is it's surplus electricity that you've actually got to deal with. You can't, your only other option is curtailment, is switching them off. So even though it's not hideously efficient, it's only a small amount of the time that the grid needs that. It's only 11% of the energy. So it actually adds its value enormously. You're buying really cheap electricity that they're virtually prepared to give away, and then you're converting it into stored synthetic liquid fuels, which when you sell that back to the grid and put it into a combined cycle gas turbine, that's premium price electricity. So that energy storage market is beginning to grow in many, many locations around the world, because it's like, give it away, sell it back at a premium price.
Okay, thank you. There's a question here about synthetic methane. How far from commercial deployment do you think it is, and how cheap can it get, particularly compared with just putting hydrogen through a fuel cell?
Well, I think you can do that, and it's a race to drop the cost. And have a look at the Store and Go website, where they've got videos which can take you around. There are other people researching it too, because if you can make it fit with the existing infrastructure, you can rescue a lot of stranded assets. But futurology is a risky business. I can't predict how low it would go. When we predicted how low solar PV would go, we got it wrong. It went much faster than even Greenpeace predicted. But it's an area for key research if the UK wants to remain at the leader of the clean energy revolution.
Okay. In terms of politicians, how do politicians and industry respond to your proposals?
Well, we presented it at all party parliamentary climate change groups for about 14 years. We're presenting it officially through the Welsh Government's Climate Week. I think that the yawning chasm between politics as usual, when we suggested in 2007 we'd be switching to electric vehicles, or wind would be, over 20% of the energy that we use, it seemed a bit off the radar to the mainstream politicians at the time. But I think the mainstream is shifting, and it's shifting because the evidence of climate is becoming much, much more real, particularly things like the release of methane hydrates from the melting ice. But I think it's also that the feedbacks that I talked about, not just the new leadership, but the falls in price, or the number of real life example projects that just need to be scaled up. And once you scale them up, the price drops. And add that to the need to create an awful lot of jobs to help people, because what is it, 24 hours till furloughing ends? We're going to have to create a lot of jobs and train a lot of people, but we can't push ourselves back to business as usual. We have to push ourselves forward and build back better.
And what do you think the single most decisive action the government could take towards zero carbon?
I think it would be to apply this levelized cost, including all the externalities, to all analysis around energy and land use, where we're including the future adaptation costs in the price of selling and buying fossil fuels. I think that would be a big step forward. But probably, if I had been Prime Minister, during the furloughing, everybody who was furloughed would have had a one-day carbon literacy training, zero carbon Britain training, and then a one-day specific to their role, be it in a head teacher or running a coffee shop or whatever. So by the end of furloughing, thousands and thousands of people would be skilled up and ready to come back and do things in a different way. Because those that I know who were furloughed got a bit bored on some days. So just to take 2 days out of that and train trainers who can train the furloughed people would have made a big difference. But sadly, I'm not Prime Minister, or perhaps fortunately I'm not.
Someone here is suggesting we should start voting for you to get you to be Prime Minister.
I think we've got time for one more question, Peter.
Can I combine them all up then?
One very long question.
Yes. There's a question here about energy storage options. Could they be used on a smaller scale? And someone's thinking particularly in regard to the University of York's combined heat and power upgrade.
Yes, it can be used on a range of different scales. One of the best examples, I think, is heat. If you have surplus electricity, say at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you use that to power heat pumps, and within the heat pump is something that has thermal mass. It can either be a sort of rammed earth wall, or it can be a floor. Then when you're putting the heat in, it sort of stores the heat for a bit like a Economy 7 electric storage radiator, if you're old enough to remember them, so that you can then use that stored heat as a way of capping the peaks and using them productively. So you don't need as much energy to run your heat pump for the rest of the day. And if you put 1 unit of surplus energy into a heat pump, you'll get 3 units of heat.
Okay. And I'm going to throw in the last question. I am going to throw in the last question before I go back to Tom. What about tidal? Sorry, how about tidal reaches? I presume they're talking about the Severn Estuary.
It needs to be explored with a levelized costing. And particularly what they were talking about around Swansea, the Swansea barrages had a lot of potential to become wildlife havens. But there are also people exploring whether the areas with wind farms where you can't fish are becoming fish havens. So let's try one. I mean, if you've ever explored the barrage across the Rance in Brittany, it's been there for a very long time. It changed the habitat, but the habitat was better for some things, even though it was harder for other things. So it's a matter, I think, of let's doing some trial projects and do some evaluations on them. But the vast majority of our reserves as the Saudi Arabia of offshore wind is off the coasts of Britain, Northern Ireland.
Okay.
Not from Oliver's Bottom anymore.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. Really interesting and inspiring.
Oliver's Bottom.
Sorry, my wife's just talking to someone on the phone. The perils of working from home.
Oh, that's who it is.
Oh,
what a perfect bit of conversation for you to hear. Yes, so yeah, I must work on the settings on this microphone as well. So thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to us tonight, Paul. Appreciate that you might need to get going now. It's been great hearing from you, and hope to hear from you again in future.
Thank you very much for all the good work you do. It's been an honour to be here. I've got to do some more work, but I will have a listen to the next presentation as I'm doing it.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Yes, so on that subject, I will introduce Andy Boyle from Otley 2030. So there's a lot of interesting environmental things going on in Leeds at the moment, which I think you might talk about a bit as well. But it sounds like Otley is some really interesting developments happening as well, both in terms of generation and energy efficiency. So I'm going to let Andy talk some more about that. So over to you, please, Andy.
Hi all. Definitely a tough gig to follow from Paul Allen. I'll talk a bit in my presentation about the role that the Zero Carbon Britain reports and course have had in our work, actually, and I couldn't recommend the course enough, and the fact that it's online now is I think a massive opportunity for people. So I agreed with Tom that I'd talk about the work that Otley Energy is doing, and really this key theme around joint ventures that I've pulled out as I've been going through the work that we're doing. And this is fundamentally the approach that we're taking. I'm not suggesting it's the only approach, but it's become a really important part of our work. So I'll give you, it's not clicking through for some reason. Right. So I'll give you a bit of background about Otley 2030 and Otley Energy and the relationship between the two. Talk a bit about where our thinking around joint ventures has come from. Talk about the joint ventures that we're involved in and a really important next step for Otley Energy that I think should be a really important next step for the community energy sector. So Otley 2030 is a climate and sustainability group working with Otley Town Council, Leeds City Council and the Leeds Climate Commission. Otley was the second town in Yorkshire to declare a climate emergency at the beginning of that incredible map that Paul showed. Leeds followed 2 days later. So Otley 2030 is working with both the Town Council and the City Council on their climate emergency commitments around the role of the community within those citywide commitments. And Otley Energy is really our commercial arm. It's a community benefit society working directly on the community energy side of the transition to a net zero community and a net zero city. So this climate and sustainability plan, we're working with Leeds Climate Commission and more recently with Our Future Leeds, who have just secured lottery funding for the development of community level climate action plans. And we've been working for the last 2 years with Leeds Climate Commission trying to replicate the Leeds Carbon Roadmap at the community level. But our climate plan is much more than net zero. It's about how we as a community adapt to climate change that's already here, and it is only going to get worse. But the climate justice side is a huge part of our work, thinking about not only how we make the transition just in this country, but how we work with and support communities around the world who will really be at the heart and already are at the hard end of climate change. And right from the beginning, we set out our stall that if we're going to do it, we may as well do it properly, and we may as well do all of it in a sustainable way and achieve those co-benefits that Paul was talking about. And we set off using the UN Sustainable Development Goals, but more recently have adapted the One Planet Living principles, which is an easier to understand set of sustainability principles developed by bioregional and that work really well in terms of community development. And from the beginning, we've realized that we can't do any of these things on our own. So that idea of joint venture and working with others has been fundamental to everything that we've been doing, partnering with national organizations and regional organizations and a huge amount with local organizations as well. Seeing that it's only coming together on projects and sharing resource and knowledge that we can achieve the things that we want to achieve. And that idea of joint venture is fundamental to the work of Otley Energy. And it's really where all of our thinking has come from. And I track it back to 3 key conferences that we attended back in early 2019. The first was UK 100, who were the climate group for local authorities, and they held their Investing in Local Energy conference in Leeds. And that really focused on this really massive gap between the billions of pounds of investment that are available for clean energy and the gap between that and the actual projects that are available to be invested in. And a key part of the work of UK 100 is around the potential role of local authorities, but the massive resource gaps that they face and the lack of development capital to get these projects off the ground. And then the UK Energy Research Centre annual conference in Oxford focused on local energy systems. And I think for me, my big takeaway, sat in the audience thinking about the role of community energy, was that the scale and the urgency of what we're talking about is way beyond what community energy could achieve or is achieving, way beyond what local authorities could do. And so I left that conference convinced that we need to be pulling together community energy and local authorities with the sector to deliver the projects that are necessary. And then I was fortunate to attend Zero Carbon Britain down in Wales to get only a week after the UKIRC conference to get a massive boost of enthusiasm and optimism about the fact that the technology is out there and that really it's about mobilising that collective and joined up action. And I think some of those feedback loops are really about driving the ambition of government. And I think that the really important bit for me and for our work with Otley Energy is that this idea of the roadmaps, the idea of what it is that we're trying to achieve and how we're going to get there. And I'd just share one here to sort of illustrate the idea of that. It's the before and after, which is important, which is what Paul was talking about. Measuring where we're at, defining where we need to get to, recognising that there's uncertainty within it, but really building that roadmap about how we're going to reduce energy use and power up clean energy supplies. So this, out of those three conferences came our focus on joint ventures, this idea of bringing the community together with local authority and the commercial sector. And community energy for us is about acting as a catalyst and a facilitator, providing flexible resource where it's necessary to try and fill some of these gaps. So from the community perspective, it's about moving away from just being consumers of energy to using that buying power more positively, but actually participating in the production of energy and the storage of energy. It's about becoming investors and advocates at the local level, so around community marketing, but really providing that mandate for government and businesses to take the action that's necessary. And from the perspective of local authorities, because I've been working quite a lot with them, recognising that there's a huge resource gap, but also recognising that they can play a fundamental role as an anchor institution, play that leadership role, and that they themselves are multiple stakeholders. They own homes, they own land, they have investment potential, they have responsibilities around fuel poverty. But for me, it's about, certainly our focus is around the community and the local authority playing that governance role and investment role and playing greater and greater participation, but recognising that we need the industry. We need their knowledge, skills, business models, finance to get these things moving. So in terms of the joint ventures that we're involved in, so back in 2019, when we got going with these things and feed-in tariff was disappearing, we recognised that community organisations could register buildings and gain 12 months in terms of fitting solar. So we quickly mobilised and quickly realised that we didn't know what we were doing, that we didn't have the knowledge, the skills, the money, anything that we needed. So very quickly we partnered with Solar for Schools, which I know you guys have had conversations with, and we wouldn't have done it without them. There's no way we would have done it without them. So not only do they have that experience, but they have that really incredible ethos around the role of solar on schools as not only an education tool, but also a community engagement tool to demonstrate that positive action that can be taken. As well as incredibly resilient in terms of dealing with schools and boards of governors and local authorities, which is a challenge because of that lack of resource. And last year, Innovate UK ran a detailed a funding competition for the detailed design of smart local energy systems. It was a £2 million fund that you could go for, and we pulled together a consortium including ONGI, the big energy company, Leeds City Council, and I think six other consortium members, really looking at the role of, and this was really about that holistic approach to the energy system. How do we balance supply and demand at a local level? And so we put together a business model for a community-led model. How do you maximize community participation in the local energy system? And I think apart from the small matter of a £6 million match funding requirement, which we didn't manage to pull together, I think we put together a pretty compelling model, and this still sits as our underlying model, that this is what we are working towards as Otley Energy. But we're waiting for that competition to start to release its learnings and the business models to emerge that we can start to adopt. And so while waiting for that, we decided to focus on that power down principle, recognizing that we need to reduce demand. So we got involved in the UK Green Buildings Council Accelerator Cities project, which is about how do we achieve citywide retrofit strategies? How do we address all the barriers to retrofit that we know exist? And again, for us, we're going through this process with Leeds City Council, working together on the city strategy, but getting access to all of these other organisations through this partnership, which is fundamental. People who know far more about these things than we do. And so that's about putting together a strategy that pulls together a coalition within a city and works on tackling those barriers, the lack of demand that there is, the lack of supply chain, and the lack of finance models. But again, loads of really exciting things coming out from people like the Green Finance Institute starting to unlock some of these things. And a fundamental element of that is we're working with Retrofit Works to launch a citywide one-stop shop retrofit model, which is recognised as really fundamental to addressing that barrier of complexity, really. So householders, the idea of householders getting their heads around and understanding and investing in retrofit, it is beyond the majority of people. So adopting a structure that walks people through that step by step is seen as fundamental. And again, we're taking a joint venture approach. So we plan to raise community investment and institutional investment. We're working on it with Leeds City Council, but lots of other stakeholders to make sure that the city feels like they own the business model. And we're effectively buying in the services of Retrofit Works, who themselves are a cooperative, who are themselves led by their members, who are the advocate organisations who promote the service, the community organisations, but also the suppliers who supply the service. And then our next step, along with all of that work that we're doing on retrofit, this is the fundamental for me, is that we bring retrofit back into this context, this wider context of that powering down and powering up that Paul was talking about, that we put it in the context of smart local energy systems. And this idea of a local area energy plan was put together by, I'm sure it's not their original idea, but a great document last year from the Catapult, explaining how you bring stakeholders together to create a holistic plan. This event is a collaboration with Community Energy England, looking at the role of community energy in local area planning. And there's a parallel set of events through Innovate UK and Catapult, looking at the local authority role in local energy systems. And for us, coming back to that joint venture principle, so for us, it's about community energy and the local authority coming together with the sector to work on these local energy plans. And that's really our next stage, as well as the work that we're doing on retrofit, is that we intend to raise the money to take Otley through a local area energy plan, hoping that will provide capacity building and act as a case study for the region. And it's very much about turning that plan into that list of projects that can actually then be invested in, those tangible projects, and hopefully putting community energy at the front of the queue, really, in terms of the community getting involved in funding and participating in those models. And that's it for me. Happy to take questions as long as none of them are technical.
That's brilliant, Andy. Thanks very much for that. And I think, Johnny, will you be okay to put a link to the website in the chat, please? Yeah, thank you very much, Andy. That's really great. And I think before Peter comes in, can I just be really cheeky and get my own question in, which is, how have you found working with Leeds City Council? Has it been a positive reception? Have they been cooperative and things like that?
Yeah, I think my overriding observation is that they just do not have any resource. It's just incredible, the world in which they're operating and the budget cuts that they've suffered, and it's just got worse. And I think that comes to my, and I'd be repeating myself, so I find them resource starved. So they're not easy to work with because they don't have the time to do anything other than the pile of stuff that's sat on the desk. Yeah, but they're I find them open and keen to work together. Yeah.
Okay, well, encouraging, I guess, in a way. Peter, have you got any questions to put to Andy from the chat, please? Are you there, Peter? Are we having some technical difficulties? Okay, well, I am just having a look then at the chat. Oh no, I think we have a Peter, yes?
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So an easy question for you first, Andy. What's the population of Otley?
It's about 15,000. Yeah.
Okay.
Census. Yeah.
And do you have a supply chain to deliver retrofit services?
No, and I think you've hit on the key challenge, that if you think about those barriers that I referred to earlier, the lack of demand and the lack of supply and the lack of finance, all of the retrofit schemes that have got going nationally very quickly bang into that lack of supply chain. So a lot of it is around how we overcome that. And just one point on that is that what we're keen to try and follow is a neighbourhood-based approach, where the retrofit works model would go in alongside the local authority, and therefore use existing supply chains, because there is a supply chain at the higher volume end. So while we build an SME supply chain, work with the existing larger scale supply chains.
Okay. Have you found a way to use the Green Home Grant to support that work? Did you hear that? You've frozen.
He's either thinking really hard or we've lost the connection. Or maybe he just didn't want to answer the question. Oh,
back.
There we go. We lost you for a minute there.
Did you hear the question?
No. I didn't like it.
So it was a supplementary to building up the local supply chains. Have you found a way to use the Green Home Grant to support that?
No, similar thing. So not even the local authorities have applied. There was a local authority slice of the Green Homes Grant, and they're struggling to find the supply chain even at that volume end to get the work done by the 31st of March. And I think at the SME level, anecdotally, and it's what we knew anyway, but everyone I've spoken to who has tried to apply, there just isn't, there isn't anyone to do the work. And everyone that I speak to from suppliers are not touching it with a barge pole because it's just too short a time frame, too badly structured.
And could you say a bit more about how you went about building the coalition of stakeholders Are you helping to bridge this political versus reality gap?
Yeah, I think, and I was reflecting on this, and I was going to mention at the beginning that the reality is that I've been volunteering pretty much full time for 2 years. So I've spent 2 years solidly phoning people and talking to people and offering my time for free into projects, and I think I only get attention because I am free. But it does mean that people introduce me, and so it's been a kind of an informal process. I've been lucky to have Anita Barton working with me for the last 11 months doing a similar thing, really. So it's really plugging that resource gap at the hard end, really.
Okay, thank you for that. That's all the questions that we have in the chat. So I'm handing back to you, Tom.
Okay, lovely. Well, that comes in perfectly at 8:45. So yeah, thanks for that, Andy. And yeah, I really do admire, like I say, your ability to sort of get all those stakeholders together and identify, you know, that it's kind of bigger than yourself, but be able to find the people to talk to get together to make it happen. I think that's a really valuable skill. I think it's so easy to just be kind of, you know, look at how much there is to do and just be completely overwhelmed and shut down, but you've kind of tackled that head on. So it's yeah, very impressive, and so close to York as well.
I would just say that people, once you manage to get to busy people, that they do want to share and that they do want to collaborate and they do want to come away from their own little silo, I think. Yeah.
Excellent. I'm just saying there might be an extra question. Do you find, for clarifying the lack of SME involvement, do you find that you get default solutions at a premium price? Do you find the price point difficult to sell to interested local individuals because the basic economics is flawed?
I think that's the fundamental, really. I think certainly when you're talking about deep retrofit, the economics are flawed. I think you've got to be talking about the wider benefits both to society to try and unlock other funding pots and make sure things like the Green Homes Grant continue in a more structured long-term way. But I think you've got to change the perception of quality homes, really, and push that idea of home upgrades being worth investing in. I think people on the continent have grown used to comfortable homes, and we accept uncomfortable homes in this country. And I think hopefully government policy will start to drive actually the need for more energy efficient homes. And certainly the likes of the big building societies who are investing a huge amount of time and effort in trying to unlock the funding products which will unlock retrofit. So the work of the Green Finance Institute, they are driven by the fact that they think that the homes that they are lending against won't be worth the same in the future if they don't meet higher energy standards. So you've got all of those things coming together to actually shift that economic story. But it's definitely not there yet. You certainly can't sell deep retrofit on payback currently.
Indeed, yes. Okay, well, I think we'll leave the questions there for now. So thank you very much for that. That was great. And then, so thanks to everyone who's stayed this far in. We just got one last bit, which is my presentation, which is not going to be too long. So this is the kind of York Community Energy year in review, which we normally do earlier on in the AGM, but like I say, we had to move things around a bit. So I will just share my screen. Can you see that okay? I'm going to take that as a yes. So for those who don't know, York Community Energy, we are an independent volunteer run charitable organisation, although from the voting that just happened at the AGM, it sounds like we're on our way to becoming a community benefit society, which is very exciting. We've been going since 2015, and YC was set up to promote community-owned renewable energy generation in York, and we've kind of grown our remit in the meantime. And so we're looking at energy efficiency as well now. So we talk about retrofit and insulation and things like that Andy's been talking about. So for the past nearly 2 years now, we've been exploring this, what we've called Warmer Homes York programme. And that's really been about us sort of learning what our place is in kickstarting a market for home retrofit in York. And we've been doing a lot of learning. We've been talking to Andy Walker from Shore Insulation, following him around, shadowing him in doing home assessments, been doing what we call housewarming parties, where we sort of get people together and work together to learn how to do some insulation under Andy's guidance. We've been doing our own thermal camera surveys as well, so we've been doing all kinds of things, and so that's kind of a background to YCE and the more recent Warmer Homes York stuff. In terms of what we've been doing in the past year, so we've sort of been developing the Warmer Homes York side much further, and so we've got a section on the website about it where you can get a bunch of guides on how to draft proof your home and retrofit and things like that, and it's kind of split out into different levels of ambition. You can hire a thermal camera from us, or we can come round and do a survey in your house, although obviously at the moment with COVID that's a bit up in the air. Just before the lockdown hit, we did a draft proofing workshop as well, so we've been sort of looking a lot at outreach, and then during the lockdown we've been quite busy from our homes as well, putting on various events, lots of public outreach. We did an event during Community Energy Fortnight about basically the whole sort of Build Back Better thing. How do we recover from the pandemic with a sort of green recovery? And then more recently we did a workshop about the Green Homes Grant as well, and how you might be able to use it in your on your home, although as various people have attested to tonight, that's easier said than done and doesn't seem to apply to a lot of people, unfortunately. So we've been kind of concentrating a lot on advocacy, I would say, and education in the past year. But now we're kind of looking to take things a bit further. So the year ahead, we'd love to do some more thermal camera surveys. They were really popular, and I think we're gonna have to make a judgment call on it and see if we can come up with a sort of COVID safe way of going around people's houses. But unfortunately, you have to keep all the windows closed and turn the heating up for 24 hours in advance and stuff like that. Ideally, we'd be talking to the households as we go around, so it's just a bit of a difficult situation, but we'll see what we can do. The same applies to the housewarming parties, the DIY housewarming parties. It'd be great to do some more of them. We've got plenty of interest. We've got people who really want us to do them, but again, it's just whether we can do it in a safe way, especially with all the numbers still rising at the moment as they are. We are still looking at solar projects, even though it's been a bit sort of quiet on the outside recently. But we have been talking to Solar for Schools, who Andy mentioned, who seem like a really nice bunch of people, and we're just sort of talking through with them at the moment how we could work with them and what kind of partnership we might have. So we're hoping to have some more news on that in the future, but nothing I can announce now, unfortunately. And then, like I say, we've just had our vote on becoming a community benefit society, which is great. So we're going to have to sort of go through the sort of legal hoops about that. But yeah, it looks like we're well on the way to becoming a community benefit society. So that's very exciting. And that means that we're going to be able to offer our own services in the future. So like I say, until now, we've been shadowing Andy Walker a lot, doing home assessments. But what we really want to do is offer our own home assessment service, and then ultimately, some other related services, in the future, and sort of build, services around every step of the retrofit journey, similar to what sort of Carbon Co-op and Retrofit Works are doing. So that's kind of our ideal. We really want to see retrofit happening in York at scale, and at the moment it's just not. So anything we can do to spur that on, we definitely want to do. And we may or may not be doing some stuff with the council as well. We've been talking to them a bit, and there's not really anything I can announce at the moment, but there's some definite potential there. So hope to have some more news for you again in future about that. So yeah, overall, I would say it's been an interesting year. Obviously, it's certainly been different to how we expected. But we've continued with our activities, and we've sort of moved things online that we can move online. And I would say that it's been really good. We've had some good turnouts to our online events, and managed to spread the word, and that's been really nice. It would be great to start doing some thermal camera surveys again, but we'll just have to play it by ear. But yeah, the next year, the next 12 months look really interesting as well. Lots of interesting projects potentially happening, and yeah, watch this space basically, because it could be a really good one. I should mention as well some upcoming events. So on the 16th of November, we're doing another draft proofing workshop. It's going to be online on Zoom. And I think Johnny might have put or is about to put the link in the chat there if you want to book onto that. And then York Environment Week is happening end of November, start of December. It's going to be a whole week jam-packed full of events. We're involved in a couple of them. So on the 1st of December, so this is it's not really our event, but it's an architect called Phil Bixby. So he's doing an event called What Your Home is Made Of and Why It Matters. And we've got a little guest slot on that. And then on Thursday the 3rd, we've got to talk about the grid. So Electric Dreams, it's all about the history of the grid and some possible futures, how the energy supply is going to match this kind of renewables rich future that Paul was talking about earlier. So it'd be great to see you at some of those. And also just have a look at the York Environment Week website. There's going to be loads of stuff to book onto. I would really recommend having a look. I think it's going to be a good one. It's the first one that's ever happened, so it's going to be a mix of online events and some in-person ones as well. So stuff like the in-person ones are going to be stuff like tree planting and sort of conservation work and stuff like that. So it's going to be really interesting. I think that's all I wanted to say about that. So it just remains for me to say thanks for coming. I'll take some questions in a minute if there are any. But yeah, just thank you for coming and for staying to the end. If you if you want to become a member of York Community Energy, we'd love to have you. And I think there is a link to that going in the chat or already in the chat. We also accept donations as well if you don't want to stretch to being a member, although it is only £2 for a lifetime membership. So yeah, it would be great to have you on board and great to see you at another event in the future. And I think that's about it. So Peter, are there any questions?
No questions as such, but maybe I'd like to let people know that there's a load of interesting links in the chat box. If you want to save them, then you could put your mouse pointer in there, copy all, and save it somewhere convenient, and you'll have a permanent record of the links that have appeared during the course of the event.
Yeah.
Back to you, Tom.
Thanks. And yeah, we'll send out an email as well through Eventbrite, and we'll put some links on there as well. So yeah, that should be okay. I've just seen a question there from Debbie saying, when do we expect to become a community benefit society? We're going to get on it as quick as we can. we're going to need to talk to a lawyer. We've got a sort of draft rules document at the moment. So really, it's just a case of, you know, how long it takes to get run that by a lawyer, make any amendments that need making, then submit the ideas to the members, and then we need to give at least 2 weeks notice of an EGM. So, I mean, you know, an aggressive timeline would put us near the end of the year, but realistically, it might be longer than that. But we'll have to wait and see. But we'll keep you informed anyway. Okay, I'm just seeing if there's any more questions. No, so I think that's everything. So we've pretty much finished bang on time. Thanks again. I realise it's been a long meeting, but I hope you've enjoyed it. And thanks so much to our speakers as well for coming along and and giving us their time. Some great talks to listen to. And yeah, hope to see you at another event in future, maybe in York Environment Week or even in November. Okay, thanks everyone.
Or at the draft proofing workshop.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye,
Thanks
everyone.
to all our members.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks. Bye.